talk a lot and move a lot when I talk. So I need some movement space. I was ordained in 2015, and since then, I don't think it has gotten any easier to preach politics. Many people may have noted in recent years that there has seemed to be a risingly volatile reaction and deep wariness toward politicized preaching. Perhaps fairly so. And I know not as much here at St. Stephen's, of course. But we too might still wish for a God that stayed out of it, or that our holy places could be somewhere where we might escape the way that the world is so complicated. Hopefully, church at least can be a place where we can just hear some good news and feel renewed and inspired. And I hope all these things too. And there's more. I think there's also some part of us that bristles at the idea of a God who would get down in the muck of it with us, who lets the kiddos holler and laugh. Christmas and the Incarnation draw us close to this gristle that we would rather spit out. This sacred text and this gospel are pretty darn political. It names government names and institutions and policies. It has something to say about how humanity gathers and wields power. The declaration and season of Christmas has something to say about clashes and courage and tenderness. And it's not the only story that we have to go on. We begin today's reading. An angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, and I had to check the page to make sure, because that sounds a lot like Joseph of Genesis to me, who even when he sleeps cannot escape the dreams that threaten and guide. And he sees them as part of God's work. These dreams are not perfect diagrams, and so Joseph naturally shares them with others as he begins to learn what to do with these wild visions. Joseph foresees significant years-long famine, struggle, and hope to survive and grow. It's a very complicated family and a messy reaction. And here I have used messy as a euphemism for, and the kid's gone, his brothers kidnapped him, left him for dead in the desert, lied to their parents about it, human trafficked him, which is how he ends up in Egypt, hustles his way to influence, survives additional trauma, and indeed, when absolutely critical, has more than enough food for everyone to save even those who resented and harmed him. Isn't church a great place to get away from it all? If not, you can always try Egypt. Generations after Joseph, the prophets, Moses and Miriam, are brought up there among their people who survived so darn well that Pharaoh in chief is terrified of their potential power and enslaved them with increasingly cruel tactics, even the children, even genocide. The assigned readings for worship generally skip those verses too. Here in the waning light of Christmas, the Holy Family must return to this place that has, ironically, been one of both refuge and bondage. Here they escape the cruelty of people who are technically their people and seek shelter with those who once did the same thing. Perhaps this pokes a hole in our attempts to make any eternal enemies of any place or people. Perhaps dreams and other means of spirituality that might seem weird to us have a sacred place in our story too. A dream brought this people to Egypt for survival once before, and now dreams point to a way through death and out the other side again. Here is a place where things can be both political and ethereal, and it makes a difference. What does it mean that Jesus is born in this way too? Deeply embedded in a complicated world, and just wanting to enjoy friends over lunch on a nice day. What does it mean that Jesus is begotten of divine love and bone and flesh that bleed? That in the vast expanse of interstellar space and time, God comes to take infant shape among an oppressed people. During this season, I have seen my friends and colleagues in Palestine and Israel sharing the number of checkpoints, bombs, and rubble that the Holy Family would have to go through to make their journey on today's map. What does it mean that God's very self is among the migrant families who just want to survive and dream and somehow still bless those that sought to destroy them? I'm sure it means many, many things. I wonder what it means to you, to us, to our senators, governors, priests, bishops, bosses, teammates. There's a temptation and a tendency, I think, to hold these things so broadly and euphemistically such that we don't have to reckon with our relationships, with policing, real estate, investment portfolios, and maybe a spiritual practice that seems too ooey-gooey for good, faithful people. Christmas is the time we come face to face with it. To be loved and holy is not to be unendangered. But neither are we left alone in it. In between these verses are the Magi who show up with supplies, debatably, insight, and they break laws to do so. Certainly, there had to have been many other people off page, pouring little slices of care into the story. Midwives who weren't expecting interruptions that night, but came running anyway. Fellow travelers sharing an extra slice of jerky, and stories about growing up with plantains instead of potatoes. Other dreamers and dissidents to wonder, teach, and stumble alongside what is both uncomfortable and liberating. So whether the days ahead for you flare or fester or fall short, do not dismay. There is more to see here. These are the traces that have toppled giants. It's a blessing when they find us. But you're allowed to seek them out. I'm going to tell you this. We have been down roads that are treacherous before, and there is wisdom and connections that the Herods would rather we not share or pass down. But my God, let's do it anyway. Who are those people for you, near you, maybe that you have been a little nervous about approaching? Who are the people and places and ideas where you might hear, share, and learn about what has been and what is becoming in movements of liberation and care, even in those small slices? We cannot always promise safety, but we can commit to courage and care because the gospel leads us there and the table nourishes us there. Amen.